Alright, look, I love video game stories. I love big, overblown characters with sci-fi weaponry taking on demons from alternate dimensions, or retired military professionals being brought back for one last mission, only to find out the enemy is their cloned brother, father, dog in a suit, or whatever. Gaming is an active medium where we're directly bolted to the experience at hand, and for me, that's why it's so phenomenal. However, being so invested in literally everything we're playing has resulted in a gaming community that picks everything apart for better or worse, and to be honest, I'm right there with you. Now, disclaimer. Almost all of the following games are phenomenal and some of my personal favorites, but part of appreciating games overall is analyzing narrative pull and overall cohesion alongside all the blasty stuff. And when it comes to that, well, I'm Scott from WhatCulture.com, and these are 9 major video game plot holes you probably missed. Also check the description for specifics on spoilers. Number 9. Kratos could have saved his family. God of War 2. Gaming's former resident psychopath Kratos went through one hell of a transformation in 2018's glorious God of War, but across the 2000s he just slaughtered everything in his wake. Civilians, soldiers, gods, deities all fell to the mighty blades of chaos, with Kratos powered by the fact that he accidentally killed his own family after Ares imbued him with power and triggered all that bloodlust. Not the best motivation for a protagonist, but not to worry. It could have all been avoided if not for Ares, and as Kratos can't undo the mistakes of his past, the only thing left to do was rip and tear until it was done, right? Wrong. See, in God of War 2, Kratos comes across the Sisters of Fate, a trio of powered-up ladies in possession of the Loom of Fate. This device weaves time together, and after Kratos gets control of it, he uses the Loom to travel back to when Zeus betrayed him at the beginning of the game, just so that he can keep killing. However, why the hell didn't Kratos just return to his family? The slap-headed Spartan could have easily just gone back further in time, back to when he wasn't a superpowered Titan-killing mess, to hang with his wife and child. Even if it never worked out and he still realized that he's a monster because of everything he's done to that point, at least he'd get to see them again. Number 8. Sam messes with her sister for no reason. Gone Home. The Fulbright Company's medium-expanding masterpiece Gone Home is just that. A game with no combat or overt mechanics other than exploration and item-based interaction, telling the story of gap year student Caitlin Greenbrier returning home. She arrives to find a note on the door from his sister Sam, apologizing that she can't be there, but saying not to go digging around finding her, and that they'll see each other again someday. What follows is an immaculate mystery, drip-fed one clue at a time, aided by the mindset we have as gamers to assume that there's a monster around every corner. It culminates in realizing that Sam left the house to be with her new girlfriend Lonnie, and the whole thing was an inversion of expectations because everything is going to be fine. So why the cryptic note? Why the misleading message on the answering machine? Why hide keys around the house that eventually lead to the attic where Sam actively hid the solution to her sister's current worry? Seriously, Sam, we were pretty freaked out. Once you know the final twist, everything in the lead up and that setup in particular no longer makes sense. Number 7. Necron appears from nowhere and is never mentioned again. Final Fantasy IX. Sometimes developers just want you to have a whopping great boss fight at the end of their game. Looking at you, Mass Effect 2. That was also the case, though, in Final Fantasy IX, where after a whole game of chasing after the nefarious Kuja, a dragon-riding pretty boy with a penchant for eidolons and world domination, you're then met with Necron. Yes, there is a fight against Kuja, and an epic one at that, but then the game has a random conversation with an invisible force and resumes as you're face-to-face with Necron, a hulking, floating blue thing with monster arms and a halo. Because video games, I guess, and you'd be right to think that, as there's no explanation for Necron other than he was forever present as a celestial being, testing the party's will to live. Post-fight, we don't get anything other than Necron realizing the will to fight was strong as he was dying, and that's that. Understandably, Necron's existence became a rather large talking point across Final Fantasy history, leading to the Final Fantasy 20th Anniversary Ultimania book to finally state that Necron was, and I quote, awakened by Kuja's fear, despair, and hatred, which called out to it as he learned of his mortality, just as his ambitions were within reach. Sure, Square Enix, that was definitely the plan all along. Number 6. Going on vacation in a ghost town. Silent Hill 2. Easily a masterful horror that's still recommendable to this day, Silent Hill 2's mysteries actually took on a life of their own once fans started picking apart James Sunderland's murderous ways and the timeline of what went down. The game spells out that Sunderland actually killed wife Mary before the events on screen. And worse still, her body was in the trunk of his car as it plummeted into a lake, hiding the evidence. One thing that came from such a deep combing of all available data, though, was analysis of Silent Hill 2's timeline. Mainly how it doesn't make sense. So in the game, James and Mary are said to have taken various holidays at Silent Hill, and that it's their favorite spot to do so. However, Silent Hill as a town is completely abandoned after its heyday in the 70s, and Silent Hill 2 is set in 1993. Even if the pair went when they were children, it would either be abandoned or full of cultists. Hardly the opportune spot for a vacation, let alone repeat visits. Not to mention, Mary has been ill for 3 years, triggering James to return to the spot where they used to hang out. This puts their vacation time somewhere close to the late 80s or slap bang in 1990, when Silent Hill was definitely a ghost town. Number 5. Halo is identified before anyone knows what it is. Halo Combat Evolved. Hands down the finest sci-fi shooter of all time. Halo's initial trilogy left an indelible mark on an entire generation of gamers, and all it takes is the operatic opening vocals of that theme to make us go all warm and nostalgic again. However, for as much as we worship old-school Bungie for delivering the franchise in such immaculate form, clearly one member of the team jumped the gun on identifying that mysterious object we were approaching at the beginning of Combat Evolved. Right at the start of the game, just after Chief comes out of stasis and visits Captain Keyes, look closely at the screen behind him and you'll notice the location you're speeding towards is correctly labeled Halo. At this stage in the game, not even Master Chief knows what lies ahead, so how could one random member of the ship accurately label it? Number 4. Ethan never calls the cops. Resident Evil 7. A super simple problem that sticks out because it's just so achingly obvious. Why didn't Resident Evil 7's Ethan call the police? Yes, he first tries to find wife Maya of his own volition, assumedly not wanting to bother anyone if it's a simple case of a dead phone or other easy explanation, but once things start going monumentally sideways, no effort is then made to reach the outside world. We do get one ray of hope through police officer Anderson turning up, but he gets killed by Jack Baker, leaving Ethan once again on the back foot. Anderson has a walkie-talkie though, and there are various telephones located across the property, as you get to use one when Zoe Baker starts contacting you, so why not try to ring out? Maybe this is explainable as the Bakers wiring their house to only allow an internal circuit of communication, but a simple scene of Ethan at least trying to establish a line to the outside would have gone a long way to avoiding this potential plot hole. Number 3. You could have saved Mars in the beginning. Red Faction Armageddon. Now this is a big old cluster of game logic. As if the shift from considered story-driven first-person fare to third-person Gears of War clone wasn't jarring enough, Red Faction Armageddon then just gave up trying to write a cohesive plot. So at the beginning you're playing as son of Alec Mason Darius, and you're trying in vain to stop a ginormous terraformer from essentially resetting the ecology and environment of Mars itself. You're sadly too late though, and in events that kick off the campaign of the whole game, the cultists win, leaving you to fight your way back to a broken terraformer to put everything right. Only, Darius is in possession of the repair ability from the beginning of the game. You acquire it in the opening mission, before the terraformer is about to wreck everything, and then in the final fight, Mason just remembers to use the repair function all over again. Mars could have been saved and all that damage averted if Darius Mason wasn't such a moron. Number 2. John Marston remembers his own life wrong. Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2. This was so easy to avoid, I can't believe Rockstar still went ahead and created a continuity error for no reason. So in Red Dead Redemption 1, we're playing as John Marston, hunting down Dutch's gang one by one at the command of Edgar Ross, because he's promised John's freedom after the deed is done. We eventually track down Bill Williamson and Javier Escuela, but there's a great scene where John meets back up with Dutch himself, leading to the pair having a trade-off of words. After a back and forth, John states that he's his own master now, and has been since you left me to die, eyeballing Dutch.
I've been my master since you left me to die.
The problem? This isn't how Dutch left John whatsoever. In Red Dead Redemption 2, set before the events of the first game, Dutch actually comes to the rescue, wounding the devious Micah who was in a standoff with John and allowing Marsden to finish him off. If anything, Dutch walking off afterwards allowed John to have the life on the ranch that he was building towards anyway. It literally just doesn't add up, and in no way could this be seen as leaving John to die.
I've been my master since you left me to die.
Number 1. Big Boss's non-existent coma. Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear Solid and plot holes? Who'da thunk it? Yes, Hideo Kojima's makes it up as he goes action extravaganza had gotten so convoluted with aging characters and canon changes over time that he straight up admitted the whole thing doesn't make sense while promoting Metal Gear Solid 5. However, many of us had cottoned onto a handful of qualms with the series' timeline before that, and I'm not just talking about Grey Fox's backstory as null. No, a more prominent issue comes from the coma that Big Boss was supposedly in when the Les Enfants Terribles project kicked off in 1972. This is said by Liquid Snake, who confirms Boss's cells were taken while he was in a coma, but later games directly contradict this. How? Because the real Big Boss was active during the events of Peace Walker and Ground Zeroes, going under in 1975 after Mother Base is attacked. It's here where Kojima's catch-all plot hole sponge of Venom Snake being a clone of Big Boss was created. But that can't explain how Boss was in a coma donating cells while simultaneously walking around. As an explanation, it's worth noting that the Japanese version of Metal Gear Solid never included the detail of Boss being in a coma. For Western releases, Konami went with the now infamous one-person translation team of Jeremy Blaustein, who possibly added the detail as he thought it made sense to the flow of liquid speech. Either way, despite everything, in the 1970s, Big Boss is in two places at once. And that is my list. Let me know down in the comments below if there were any other pernickety as hell plot holes that you want to share with the world. For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com. Please check out the WhatCulture Gaming Podcast, and I'll catch you soon.